I don't want my character C++ file to have too many functions in it. So I'm going to create a combat component to take care of equipping the weapon and other combat related things. Let's go to Rider and add a new class. Select Actor Component and name it Combat Component. I will save it in a Components folder. Let's clean this up and set tick to false and set it to replicate. Now, instead of using the weapon actor directly to equip it to the character, I'm going to use an item instead. You see, later you might want to have an inventory system to store items, and I don't want to store weapons directly in my inventory. I want to store items, and the items can have a reference to an actor. This will make it a lot more flexible. So let's make an item class. We create a new class called item. It's going to be a U object, and I'm going to put it in a item folder. I'm going to add some properties to its U class. We are going to make a child class from it, a weapon item class. You can imagine making potion items, armor items, and all kinds of things that you could store in your inventory. All our weapon item needs right now is just a reference to a weapon actor class. Don't forget to forward declare it. Now let's go back to our combat component. Now let's add an array of weapon items so that we can have multiple weapons equipped at once. For example, you could have a sword and a shield, or any combination of weapons. It doesn't even have to be limited to 2. You could have an infinite amount of different weapons. Now let's add a private section and add 2 variables to store our weapon actor once we have them equipped. Here I'm making a main hand weapon to hold a sword, for example, and an offhand that can hold a shield. Feel free to add more if you want to. and let's forward declare weapons. Now let's make a function that will equip our weapon from the weapon items provided. Let's make it a bool so that we know if we spawned a weapon successfully. Here I'm just going to return true. Now the first thing to do is to check if we indeed have a weapon item to equip. If not, we return false. We also only want this function to be executed by the server because the client can cheat. So let's check if we have authority. Now let's make a for loop to go through all the weapon items that we have. Include both weapon item header file and weapon header file. Let me rename this array to weapon item classes as it can hold multiple weapon items. Now we check if the weapon class that we are working with is valid. If we do have a valid weapon item class, let's make a weapon item from it to access the weapon actor that it contains. Let's spawn the weapon actor by accessing it from the weapon item. This spawn actor function requires some spawn parameters to set on the weapon. Let's make a spawn parameter to passing. I'm going to call it spawn params. We are going to set the owner of the weapon to the same owner of its component. and set the spawn collision to always spawn. Now we can pass that in. If the weapon was spawned successfully, we can set it to replicate. Now that we have spawned a weapon, we need to equip it to the character. Let's make a function that will handle this. It's going to take in a weapon to equip as parameter. First, we check if the weapon we are trying to equip is valid. Now, if we are on the server, we are going to set our main hand weapon to the provided weapon. We are not using offhand weapon and including logic to handle different weapons for now. Once we have tags set up, we can take care of all that. For now, we are just going to make it our main hand weapon. Later we can expand on this. Now we need to attach the weapon to the character, but I'm actually going to make a function on the weapon itself to do that. Let's make a function and call it AttachToCharacter. It's going to take in a socket name to know where it should attach itself. First, we checked if the attachment point provided is valid. If it is, we can just attach the weapon to the owner of this weapon. We can now set hidden to false since the weapon has been equipped to a character. Back in the combat component, we are going to call that function, passing in an attachment point. We are going to hardcode 1 for now. We can make this more versatile later. In spawn and config, we can now call handle EquipWeapon after we spawn the weapon. Also, we need to call this spawn and config function somewhere. For now, we are going to do it in our character in BeginPlay. And we also need to give a combat component to our character. Now in BeginPlay, let's check if we are on the server and we have a valid combat component. Then we can call our spawn and config function. Let's test this out. Let's make a blueprint for our item first. We need to set the weapon class to the BP hammer actor that we have. Next, in our character blueprint, we can give it all the items that we want to equip. Here the hammer item. And finally, let's make sure we have a socket with the correct name to attach the weapon to. In my skeleton, I'm going to find hand R and add a socket to it. the name should be weapon R, like we set in C++. Let's confirm it's the correct name. Now let's press play. Hey, it's working. Well, our weapon is floating, but we can easily fix that. Oh, and let's just make sure we are playing as server and see if it's working. Now let's see if it works as client. There's no weapon, huh? Well, first let's fix the position of the weapon first, then we can see why it's not spawning on the client. Let's go to our skeleton, then in preview animation, let's select our idle animation. Let's find our weapon socket and add a preview asset to it, and select our hammer. Now let's move it around until it's positioned correctly. I think I'm satisfied with it. Let's see in-game. Perfect. Now let's figure out why our weapon doesn't spawn on the client. If we review our code, we can see that we are spawning the weapon on the server, which is what we want. Then still on the server, we called handle EquipWeapon, which take care of attaching the weapon to the character. But only on the server, the weapon is never attached on the client. Let's fix that. First, let's make our main hand weapon variable a replicated one, so that when it is set on the server sets it on the client at the same time. We do that by adding replicated using in the property. OnRep main hand weapon is a function that's going to be called when this variable is replicated. So if we set the weapon on the server, we will set it on the client, and this function will be called. Let's make our OnRep function. It won't let me make a definition for these functions for some reason. Let's make them manually for now. So when the main hand weapon is set on the server, it is set on the client and the OnRep function is called. Here we are going to check if we have a main hand weapon. We should, since the server just set it for us on the client. Now on the client we are going to call handle EquipWeapon, passing in our main hand weapon. Now if we are on the server and we call handle equip weapon, first it checks if the weapon is valid, and then it checks if we are on the server. If we are, it will set the main hand weapon. But if we call it from the client, it will still check if our weapon is valid. Then, since we are not on the server, it will go straight to attaching the weapon on the client. Now, we also need to add another function. You see, when you replicate something in Unreal, you have to use the function GetLifetimeRepProps. It will do all the heavy lifting when it comes to replicating our weapons for us. Make sure you add the header Unreal Network. Now our weapons variable are replicated. Also, I'm missing the type of the functions here. Oh, that's why it was not working. Let's test this out and make sure we are on the client. Here we go, it's working. Next, we'll fix a few bugs and then build our server and client.